If you signed up for my newsletter, you get all kinds of good stuff out of there. And something I sent out to you last night because of a verdict that was rendered last night. And I got to tell you, I was pretty shocked by this. New York is such a fallen state. And I don't advocate for people abandoning fallen states. I do advocate for you getting involved as much as humanly possible and taking it back, because you can't just keep ceding ground and running from fights. And New York's got some really stupid laws, and they're in the courtroom over a lot of them. I'm not going to get into the weeds with all the different things that have happened with them since Bruin and everything else, but what they did last night, and he was a guest on our show in February, Dexter Taylor, aka Carbon Mike. And he's a Second Amendment enthusiast. I don't say this as a pejorative. He's a dork. He's like one of those guys who loves, I bet How It's Made is his favorite show. He loves putting things together. He's really into engineering. He loves to understand how things work. And he loved cars. And when he figured out about making his own firearms, that really interested him. And he thought it was fascinating the way everything goes together and all the stuff that you can do. And so he started doing that, even started doing it, before New York started passing all of these insane laws, trying to purposely make innocent people into felons. And so he was on the show in February because the state of New York had NYPD and the ATF raid his home, bust his door in, because they were accusing him of making ghost guns. Now, you have to understand, the accusation was predicated upon their belief and again, another accusation that he was like somehow distributing or selling these guns, which he absolutely wasn't. I mean, Taylor is an innocent man. He has no criminal record at all whatsoever. And he was not selling the things that he was building. And by the way, that is protected under federal law. I don't give a rat's backside what your state wants to pass. The ATF, this is 18 USC 922O, that's subsection O, subsection P and R, and it gets into 26 USC 5822. A license is not required to make a firearm solely for personal use. A license is only required to manufacture firearms for sale or distribution. Furthermore, you do not have to serialize your firearm that you are making if it is for your own personal use. That's something that manufacturers used to use to track product, and then the government came in and decided to exploit it and use it as a way to sidestep any kind of federal law prohibiting a registry. So this is what they're going after. Dexter Taylor over. And so he was found guilty yesterday. He was found guilty yesterday. And he was sent to prison. He's in Rikers right now. They're going to try to put him away for 18 years. 18 years. This is just one of the craziest things I've ever read. So the state of New York thinks that he's a dangerous felon because he's a gunsmith. And he wanted to actually at some point get his FFL, and he was building up to that. He was exploring weapons science. He was looking at all of the different ways you can do things better. And this is really one of the coolest things about the firearms industry, is so many of these manufacturers are small mom and pop shops, and they all are looking at ways to do it better. And he was getting to the point where he wanted to become an FFL and he wanted to leave New York. This is one of the things he was talking with us about. Well, he was using his credit card to make purchases of legal products to do his legal activity at home. It would be like me using my credit card to purchase yarn, and then I'm crocheting at home for my own personal enjoyment. And then NYPD and ATF came and raided his home, knocked his damn door in, and decided to take him to prison. And now he's convicted, and he's looking at 18 years. They took him immediately into custody last night. He's in Rikers right now. The same ATF, by the way, that helped raided his home. This is the same ATF. Yes, they do love shooting dogs. That had such lax security that they literally allowed a security guards to steal guns from their National Firearms and Ammunition Destruction Branch for 3 years straight. There was an Office of the Inspector General report that came out in September of 2022, headline DOJ OIG, Office of Inspector General, releases report on the ATF's disposal practices. And they said that they noticed that thousands of firearms, firearm parts, and ammunition had been stolen from the ATF from 2016 to 2019. And that it required a DOJ, OIG, ATF, and DHS investigation. And they found that security guards were convicted these people in connection with these thefts. The ATF could not keep their own stuff on lock. Thousands of guns, ammunition, and parts stolen. Thousands. These are the same people that want to bust up into your house if you're making things for your own hobbyist enjoyment. I've never had a gun stolen, but the ATF has. Same ATF. And this is, by the way, also the same ATF, as you know, that has zealously worked to revoke the federal firearms licenses, which I'm going to explain in a moment. Those are called, that's when I say FFL, that's what that means. Since this administration, since Biden took office, there has been an over 500% increase in the revocation of licenses. And do you know what the number one cited reason is? Clerical error. Paperwork. They're not going after enforcement of criminal activity. They're going after reduction. They want to reduce FFLs. So, see, if the voters, if the American people are just going to give their Second Amendment away, then they'll try to do it in a bureaucratic fashion. The government will. Yes, the ATF, very, very eager to do this. Lee Williams wrote how previously, usually you would have a revocation of maybe on average 40 licenses a year, but in the 11 months when Joe Biden took office, within that 11-month period, they revoked over 273 FFLs. And that's just in one 11-month period, his first year. It's skyrocketed since then. I can't tell you, and because it's an ongoing litigation, I'm not allowed to tell you, well, I don't want to jeopardize their cases. If you guys knew the number of manufacturers and FFLs that have personally reached out to me and explained to me the way in which the ATF has been harassing them relentlessly, it's not about enforcement. It is about intimidation, and they want to shut them down. You would fall over if you knew the number of people who have reached out to me personally to share with me how the ATF has been harassing them, making their lives a living hell, and trying to take away their FFLs, and they've done nothing wrong. Meanwhile, the ATF allows for thousands of guns to be stolen from their own property because they can't keep their stuff on lock. Same ATF. So this is who raided Dexter Taylor's home. And the main justification, as I told you, for all those revocations is paperwork errors. Now, the state argues that Dexter Taylor should have obtained a license to make his own firearms. Now, a lot of this stuff that New York is doing, they're trying to, which is, technically they're not actually allowed. What they're trying to do is say that, well, a perfectly legal activity that has been legal up to this point that you've done, for years, we're going to decide to statewide, we're going to try to ban it, and then we're going to try to retcon it and not grandfather all of your past activity in, and then try to convict you for what you were doing when this was legal. That's what New York is trying to do. There's a name for that, and there's actually court cases against it. But so you have the state trying to fabricate criminality for an innocent man that has a clean record. And they're doing this. New York does not hand out licenses. I talked to a friend of mine who hosts his own primetime show on Fox News. And I've had to talk with him about getting his license. And he was waiting, it was over a year. Says, oh yeah. It is insane. They make it prohibitively impossible for you to get a license there. And that was just to carry. He wasn't going to try to make anything or receive anything. New York is not in the habit of granting licenses. And they don't grant licenses, so then they can say if they think that you're doing something for which they would have had to grant you a license, they try to it's entrapment. They want to get you and make you into a felon. Dexter Taylor has literally no offenses ever. He probably has a cleaner record than some of you listening to this program right now. And they're trying to make him into a felon because of this. This is a civil rights story about a natural rights issue. And because race is so very important to the left in these stories, where is the left out in the street protesting the case of a black man who's being unfairly targeted by the state? Where are the protesters out in the street claiming injustice over the case of an innocent black man who was targeted by the state, had his door knocked in, and raided? Where are the people who were out there in the street for Breonna Taylor? Where were the people who were out in the street for George Floyd? This is an actual rights activist who is innocent and has been bullied and harassed and persecuted by the state. And I dare say, I would venture so far as to say that he was specially targeted because he is a black man exercising his Second Amendment rights. And there's nothing that progressives historically hate more than free black Americans exercising their Second Amendment rights. And if you don't believe me, I dare you go back and look at the decision of Judge Roger Taney. Where are the protests? Where are the hands up, don't shoot people at? For Dexter Taylor. He didn't do anything wrong, but he's being bullied and targeted and harassed by an administration where the vice president has put more people of color in prison than any other AG in California really before her, and the president of the United States who eulogized a Klan member. Because I know the left is really big on this, so let's check the boxes, shall we? The left is always silent on constitutional abuses, particularly when it concerns the Second Amendment, and particularly when it concerns the Second Amendment and people of color. You won't hear them on that. You won't hear them. Otis McDonald, did you ever hear the left celebrating Otis McDonald? Are there any statues to Otis McDonald anywhere in Chicago? Do y'all even know who Otis McDonald is? Because the media won't tell you. They don't care. Why? Because it was a black American who lived in Chicago who wanted to exercise his Second Amendment rights. And they don't believe that the Second Amendment is a legitimate right. So they treat it like a second-class right. And they treat people who advocate for it like second-class citizens. Otis McDonald single-handedly took down the gun ban in Chicago. A veteran who lived in a bad part of town and who did not want to move because he had lived there and raised his family there, and he wanted to stay there. He wasn't going to let the criminals win. And he saw his neighbors being attacked and robbed and mugged and assaulted, and he was tired of it, and he wanted to be able to carry a gun for his own protection. And I dare say this guy, Otis McDonald, was more trained and had better sense than some of the people wearing the badge carrying it. No offense, but he did. And Lisa Madigan, the AG in Illinois and the city of Chicago, said no, so he had to take him to court, and he won. He has since passed, God rest his soul, but he's a hero. A civil rights activist, but it's for a natural right. He's a natural rights activist because these are rights that are not created by men for men in a court of law. They are rights that you have by way of being an American citizen. They are taken out of the domain of man. So man cannot pervert them, man cannot pollute them, and he cannot take them away. The left doesn't want to acknowledge this. You don't hear a lot about Otis McDonald. You're not going to hear anything from the left about Dexter Taylor. There will be no protests. You will not hear Al Sharpton talk about Dexter Taylor. You will not hear his name on MSNBC. You will not hear Jake Tapper talk about him on CNN. There will be no CNN town halls for Dexter Taylor. You're not going to have MSNBC do an interview with him from jail like they did Avenatti. No, because see, Dexter Taylor is the wrong type of activist, the wrong type of advocate, and the wrong type of American. That is why. The left is showing you who they are by who they don't support. They're showing you how seriously they care about natural rights by how quiet they are when those rights are severely abridged. They're showing you that they really don't give a rat's ass about police violence or any kind of government violence when they stay silent. When an innocent man has his home broken into by the federal government, by the state government, the ATF and NYPD on behalf of New York State, raided and tossed into Rikers for nothing. He's in Rikers with murderers and rapists. An innocent man who has done nothing wrong. And you're not going to see any big gun rights groups take up his cause publicly either because they're afraid. They feel like, oh, the case might be too complicated. We don't know how to talk about ghost guns. That's not an easy sale to put up on the big screen at our fancy luncheons. So they're not going to say anything either. And they never do. So that's the case of Dexter Taylor. An innocent man who is facing 18 years in prison for doing not a damn thing wrong. Hands up, don't shoot indeed, right?